Begin today the Gemara on the Afayin Daled, the Mishnah at the beginning of the Yomut. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, Eilu Asurin, the following things are Asur, and they're Asur Bahana, and V'Oisrin B'chol Shehu. And when there's a mixture, it also causes an Isser, even a Kol Shehu, whatever it is, even if it's mixed with 1,000 times as much, as whatever the number is, doesn't matter. It's going to be Asur. Okay, so as we'll see here in the continuation of the Mishnah, what this Mishnah is talking about, as opposed to what we were learning before, is a mixture, not when the actual, for example, wine itself, the yayin nesach itself, gets mixed into the wine that's mutter. That's a kind of mixture in Hilchas Haruvis that's called lach balach. Here, it's talking about where there's a mixture of pieces, of barrels, yavish b'yavish, different things that get mixed together. So these are all cases where there'll be no bittul at all. Okay, so it begins first with yayin nesach, which means a barrel of yayin nesach that got mixed amongst 1,000 barrels, or Avoda Zara, of Avoda Zara, an image of Avoda Zara that got mixed amongst another 1,000 things that are similar, or v'oiris levuvin. This is what was mentioned earlier in the Masechta. The minig by the Avoda Zara was that they would cut open in the hide of the animal by the heart, and they would take out the heart and sacrifice Avoda Zara. So that entire heart, not the heart, sorry, the whole skin, the whole hide of the animal is all going to be Asur Bahana as well. So these are all things, if it gets mixed, it's going to be Asur. In the Gemara, it actually says that the reason all these things do not become bottle is because besides it being something which is Asur Bahana, it's also a dava chashuv. Something that has chshivis never becomes bottle. Rashi says that point the Gemara says applies to these three cases here as well, but there are other Rishonim that say that these three things that are related to Avoda Zara, even if it's not chashuv, it still will not be bottle. Okay, then the Mishnah goes on to other things that are not Avoda Zara, v'shoira niskal, the ox that gored and killed a person, and he's chai, the ox has to be stoned to death, and therefore it's Asur Bahana. So this is the ox when it's still alive, it's a behemoth, it's never going to be bottle, even if it mixes with other animals. Ve'egla arufa, this is the calf that's used when a person was found dead, and you have to bring a calf there and chop off its from its neck. So this is also Asur Bahana, whether before shechita or before they chop off its neck or after. There's a machlekes about it, but this as well, if it gets mixed, it's a dava chashuv, and it will not be bottle. V'tzipayre mitzayre, the birds that are used for the mitzayre, when you mitayre the mitzayre, so you have to use birds as well for this. So the Gemara in Kedusha learns out that it's Asur Bahana. V'sar nazir, the hair of a nazir is also Asur Bahana. As Rashi brings the pasuk, v'nasan ala eish ashatach hazevach hashlamim, that hair has to be placed there, and it's Asur Bahana, it's to be burnt there. Now this hair is also never going to be bottled, so it has to be in a case where this hair is a dava chashuv. They would sell these hair in bundles to be used maybe for a sheitel, whatever it is, but it's something that's chashuv. Upeta chamayr, the firstborn by a chamayr, which is also Asur Bahana as long as it was not redeemed yet. Ubasa b'chalav, and also basa b'chalav. So as Rashi explains, what this is talking about is a chashuv piece of meat that you could serve on the table. It's a chaticha royal iskabid. And this piece of meat had some milk that was mixed in it, so it's now Asur. If that piece now gets mixed into other pieces of meat, it'll never become bottle. Okay, but we're not talking over here, Rashi clarifies it, not like others that want to say, we're not talking about here basa b'chalav, that if there's a drop of milk that got mixed into meat, or a drop of meat that got mixed into milk, that it won't be bottle. It will be bottle. Over there is the halacha of bittul b'roif.
So what is the case
that there's a piece of meat, a piece of meat, that a drop of milk went onto it and made it Asur, and it was not bottle, and this piece is not bottle, and that piece, which is chashuv, now got mixed again with other pieces of meat that are mutter.
Provided they were bishul. This is bishul.
Yeah. Shouldn't bashul b'cholav, correct? Yeah. Okay, another case, the Mishnah says, v'sayra mishtaleach, the goat that's sent to be thrown off the azazel. So this is also something which is Asur to have any hana from. Many are not good as this. The Gemara here says you erase it. Rishonim don't have it. Rashi doesn't explain it because this is basically a case of Asur Bahana because of kachim, and the Mishnah does not count all the cases of kachim here. So it sort of doesn't fit into the list here.
Before.
Huh?
It's before.
Before it's thrown off the mountain, correct?
Use
the pieces. V'chulin shenishchetu ba'azara. The last case, chulin, an animal that's not kosher, that was shechted in the azara. So it's not allowed to be shechted in the azara, and if it was, it becomes aser bahana. Hare'elo asurim. All these things are asin. The Mishnah says it again. The Gemara will explain why. All these things are aser ve'oisrin b'chol shuhu, and it'll be aser with whatever mixture. It's always going to be aser b'chol shuhu. Talk to Gemara. Tane Maika Choshev. What exactly is this list that the Tane is counting here? Because as we'll see, the Gemara will point out there are certain things that are missing in this list. So I want to understand what is the list here. If the point of all these things that are mentioned here is because it's a davar shebeminyan, which is one example of things that are choshev. When you sell things by count, that's a sign of its chshivus. So the Khan is mentioning all these things that are choshev, davar shebeminyan. You also have chaticha ruya l'skabed, or if it's a live animal. These are things that are choshev that are not batal. But if so, listni nami chatichas nevela. Why doesn't it bring the isser of nevela, meat that was not shechted, and it's a choshev piece of meat? If it gets mixed with other things, it will not be batal. And if you're going to say it doesn't count nevela, because nevela is only aser ba'achila, it's not aser b'hana. And this Mishnah is counting all those things that are aser b'hana, so it's missing one. Listni nami chometz v'pesach. Why doesn't it count chometz v'pesach? Even a crumb of chometz on Pesach, it's not choshev, but it's a crumb which is aser b'hana, so that should also not be batal, if that's the point of the list in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, that Hai Tane Tarti Islay. The Tana here is counting all these things where there's two conditions in order for this not to become batal. It has to be a davar shebeminyan, something which has chshivus, that it's counted, or for another reason that has chshivus, and then the Isurei Hana. But it also has to be specifically something which is Asa B'Hana. So therefore the Nevela, which is only Asa B'Achila, does not fall into this list. And so too a crumb of Chametz, which is not Choshev, but even though it's Asa B'Hana, it doesn't go into this list as well. But it should also say the nuts that come from this place called Perech, and the pomegranates that come from a place called Badon. These are large and they're very Choshev. The davar shebeminyan, it's something that has that chshivus and it's sold by count. And the Isurei Nohu, if this comes from a tree, from Arla, the first 3 years, it's Aser B'Hana, and it should mention them in this list that it never becomes batal. As the Gemara Hatan Alei Hasam, there's a different list that it already says in a different Mishnah in Masechta Arla. There the Mishnah also gives a whole list of things that will never become batal. And the Mishnah there, after it says the list, goes on to say, Haroy la Arla. Those things mentioned in the list that are fruits from trees, and therefore the din of Arla applies to them, so then the Isser of Arla is there, and it will not be batal. Haroy la Klaya Kerem. And those things mentioned in the list that are not fruits, they're vegetables, and therefore the Isser of Klayim applies to it, which is also Isser Hana, Klaya Kerem. So then it will be the Isser of Klaya Kerem, and it will not be a batal. So it's a Mishnah in Arla. The Gemara, going back to what we mentioned before, Chametz on Pesach, which is Aser B'Hana. So we said it doesn't mention a Chametz b'Pesach because if it's a crumb of Chametz, or Chametz, it's not Choshev, so it's going to be batal. But the Gemara asks, V'lisni kikrei shel balabayis le'inyan Chametz b'Pesach. Why wouldn't it say a loaf of bread that a balabayis privately baked that's Choshev, and it's Pesach, it's also a Bahana, so it has both conditions that it should not be batal, and why isn't it mentioned there? And says the Gemara, Man Shamet, Na'amala, who do we hear that mentions this, that said this case of the loaves of bread? Rabbi Akiva. It's Rabbi Akiva that said this. And Hatan Elei Asam. In that Mishnah in Arla, he actually mentions it. It says there, Rabbi Akiva, Moisef, Af Kikroi Shel Balabayis. Rabbi Akiva mentions also the loaves of bread of a balabas. Even though Rabbi Akiva there is not talking about Chametz specifically, he's talking about, I think it's Klaya Kerem there, but nevertheless, this concept of Kikrei Shel Balabayis, that it's Choshev, when it's also Aser B'Hana, is already counted in that Mishnah there. Okay, going back to the Lashon of the Mishnah, it concluded, Harei Elu, that these are the ones that are going to be Aser, and they will be Aser even with a mixture, with a Kolshu. So the Gemara asks, why does it say this again? L'mutimai, what's the Harei Elu coming to exclude? So the Gemara explains, like we already said before, that that's the point here. L'mu'ute, it's coming to exclude davar shebeminyan v'lav Isurei Hana. If it's something which is choshev, it's sold by count, but it's not Aser B'Hana, Inami, or Lemuti Surya no, Valav Davashaviminian, or something which is Asaba no, but it's not Choshev, that's not included in this list, it will be Batal. Sagt der Heilige Mishnah, Yayin Nesach, Shenofal Abayr. Yayin Nesach falls into a Bayr, Kuloi Aser Bahana. Because of this mixture, it all becomes Aser Bahana. Rav Shimon Gamliel says that no, in essence, this wine that was mutter in this Bayr is still mutter. There's a mixture of Yayin Nesach. Yeah, the Yayin Nesach you can't have Hana from, but the rest of it is really mutter. So what do? You can sell the whole thing to a guy. Besides, you have to deduct the value of that yayin nesach that was mixed in. That's the only thing you can't have enough. But the mixture will not answer the entire thing. Rav said we paskin like Rav Shimon Gamliel here in this Mishnah, but not always. Only chavis b'chavis. If the mixture here is like the previous Mishnah, when it's one barrel of yayin nesach that mixed amongst of many other barrels. Then I say, like what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, you can sell it and deduct the value of that yayin nesach. Avaloi yayin b'yayin. But not in a case if it's wine that's mixed into the actual wine itself. It's a real mixture of lach b'lach. In such a case, it will aser the entire wine and you can't sell any of it. Shmuel Amar, however, Shmuel says, afila yayin b'yayin. Even if it's a mixture with the wine itself, the halacha of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that you could sell it minus the value of the yayin nesach will apply. Even if it's wine in the wine itself. Even with the wine itself. So all of these Amiram held even in the wine itself. We pass on Rav Shimon Gamliel that it's only the yayin nesach that's aser, but you can sell it minus the value of that yayin nesach. Amar Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman said about this, halacha l'maaseh, the halacha that you can actually put into practice is as follows. It depends if it's really yayin nesach or not. Yayin nesach, if it's actually wine that was poured for Avoda Zara, then we're going to be machmer like Rav said. And if it's yayin b'yayin, if it was mixed into wine that's mutter, but it's mixed into the actual wine itself, aser. The whole thing becomes aser. Chavis b'chavis, but if it's one barrel that was mixed amongst many barrels, then mutter. Then it'll be mutter. However, if it's stam yayin or stam yainom, the stam wine of a guy where the chachamim were guys that it should be aser because of a chashash of yayin nesach, so here afila yayin b'yayin mutter. Even if it's wine that's mixed into wine, we'll pass completely up like Rav Shimon Gamliel that you can sell it, you can have hana, as long as you deduct the value of the yayin nesach that's mixed into it. Yeah. Zakta Elige Mishneh, gas shel even, a wine press that's made from stone, shezavsa evikachavim, that a guy came and he covered it, he lined it with pitch or with kind of tar, pitch. And now the minig was, in order to get rid of the bad odor that there is in this pitch, they would pour wine in it. So menagva, so because he poured wine in it and it gets a little bit absorbed into this pitch, so for the yid now to come and use this wine press, he has to dry it up. And then the tahira, it's pure, it's kosher, it can be used. And the Gemara, and we'll learn on Daf Ayin Hey, it'll explain what's the process of drying it up exactly. It's done with ashes, with water. Vishal eitz, if it's not stone, but it's made from wood, and in such a case, it needs to be covered with a thicker layer of this pitch. So Rabbi says, even though there's a thicker layer here, but still Yanagev, same like before, it'll be enough just to dry it up. However, Chachamim say that when it's wood, yikloif. Here, if the guy did this and he poured some wine over it in order to get rid of that odor, you're going to have to peel off an outer layer to be allowed to use it. Or we read it together. Yikloif es azefes. You have to peel off this pitch. Now, v'shal cheres, if this is an earthenware wine press, and that's what was covered with this pitch, afal pisha kolav es azefes. Even if you're going to peel off the pitch, it's not enough. Harezu asura, it's going to be aser because it gets completely absorbed, and it gets absorbed in the cheres. Once the cheres absorbs this, there's no way to be mat to this. So Rav said about what it said in the Mishnah, dafke zofsa. What's the case? We're talking about that the yid has a problem here and he has to dry it up. That's when it was layered or it was covered with this pitch. So then you dry it up in the process that the Gemara will explain, and then it's good. Avol dorach ba. But if a guy came and used the Yid's wine press and he pressed wine in it, and now you have Isser wine that was used here, loy. Then just drying it up is not going to be enough. Says the Gemara Pshita. What Rav is saying is obvious. It's Afsatna. The Mishnah here is saying clearly that it's only the case where the guy just came and layered it with this pitch and it just poured some wine over it to get rid of the odor. It's then that it's enough to dry it up. Why would I think if a guy actually came and pressed wine in a Yid's wine press that it should be okay to just dry it up? So the Gemara says, Mao the Tema, I would think to say, even if the guy came and pressed wine in the Yid's wine press, it'll just be enough. It would be enough to dry it up. The Mishnah gives the example of the guy that layered it or covered it with this pitch. The Mishnah is giving you an example of what's more usual. Usually a Yid will only allow a guy to maybe come and do this work for him, to layer it, to cover it, but to actually press it in his wine press, that's not a usual case. That's why it's not mentioned in the Mishnah. But I would think if it happens, then the same halacha would apply, like the Mishnah said. Kamash Malan, therefore the Rav had to come and say that the Mishnah is dafke. If the guy layered it, then you can dry it up, but if you actually pressed wine there, then that's not enough. And you're gonna have to rinse it off properly. Okay. So there's another version of what Rav said. Rav said, dafke zavsa. The case of the Mishnah that says he dried up and it's enough, that's if he covered it with the pitch. But if besides covering it with the pitch, he then went and pressed wine in it also, so then it's not going to be enough to dry it up. The Gemara again, Pshita, it's obvious. It says in the Mishnah that he just covered it with the pitch and didn't do anything else. Says the Gemara, no, Mao, the Taimim, because I would think to say, that it includes even if the guy went and pressed his grapes there as well. It only says that the guy covered it with pitch. The Milsa Ketani, the Mishnah is saying what's common that usually the Yid does not allow a guy to do such a thing. Kamash Malon, Dafke Zavsa. Therefore, the Mishnah is saying that it's only if it was covered with the pitch by the guy, but if the guy comes and actually presses his grapes there, it's not going to be enough with nigov. It's going to have to be, you're going to have to remove a layer of the zephis of the pitch in order to be able to use this. So as we see in the following incident, a person came in front of Rab Chia, he says to Rab Chia, Havli Gavre, give me a reliable person, the dachili ma'atzar to'i, that will make sure that my wine press is clean, it's good, it's kosher to use. So Amalei Rav Chia says to Rav, which was his student and also his nephew, Zilbade, go together with this person, and v'chazi, see to it till mitzavches alai b'midrasha, paskin and kasher is placed properly, that there shouldn't be any problems later, that he shouldn't come back to me to scream to me in the bismedrash that it wasn't done properly and now my wine is not kosher. So Azal Rav went with him. He sees that the wine press covered with this pitch is very smooth. So Amar, the Rav said, all that has to be done here is, even if the guy did this, you just have to dry it up properly, like the Mishnah said, and that would be enough. But then, as he's walking there and he's looking around, and he's coming, he sees a crack at the end, at the bottom of this wine press, and he sees that this crack is full of wine. So now when he saw that, he understood that the guy actually used it to press his grapes there. So Amar, he said, if so, here it's not going to be enough just to dry it up. You're going to have to peel off a layer from this, and only then it'll be good. He said, this is what my uncle Rab Chia told me. Make sure that you see that you should inspect the wine press properly and to kasher it properly, that it shouldn't come back screaming to me in bismedrash. So here comes to show, when you inspect the facility, whatever it is, a factory, you have to look well, and you have to make sure you notice everything. Tana Rabbana, we learn to Nabraisa. Hagas, the wine press, and here, as we'll see from the continuation, we're talking about the earthenware wine press. Vahamachatz, which is some kind of something, I don't know how they translate it there, but it's used to draw out the water from a funnel that's used to draw out the water from the pit into a barrel. Or vahamashpech. Mashpech is, I think, translated as a funnel that's used to pour into barrels. So it's through the funnel. Again? Yeah, okay. Shalayv de kechavim, all these that are from Goyim. So how could you kasha this to use it? So Rabbi says it'll be allowed benigov, by just drying it up in the process that this drying up is. The Chachamim but Chachamim say that it's not allowed. What Rabbi says here is a big chiddush, because in the Mishnah, at the end of the Mishnah, it said that when it comes to earthenware, it absorbs and there's no way to kasha that. But here Rabbi says it's allowed. The Gemara will soon discuss this. However, Rabbi will agree that if it's earthenware barrels of goyim, shehein asurim, that it will be aser. Bryce explains, what's the difference between these other utensils that Rabbi says you could just dry it up in the barrel? The Bach says likiyum. When it comes to the barrels, it's used to store wine in it for a long period of time. However, the other utensils that are used is the wine flows through it, but it's not made to store for a long period of time. Right to the Bryce says, if the wine press is made from wood, or vishal even, or from stone, and the guy used it, you have to dry it up, and it's enough. Now, if it's covered with pitch, then it's going to be aser. It's not enough to dry it up. It's going to be aser unless you think over here. That means that you have to peel off a layer for this. Okay, so now the last din that the Braisa here said, the Gemara asks, this contradicts what it says in the Mishnah. Because Vatanan in the Mishnah it said, Gas shel even, if it's a stone wine press, shezovsoy v'kachavim, that the guy covered it with the pitch, menagva, all you have to do is dry it up, v'hita'ira, and it'll be tired. And over here, it's saying that this stone or wood wine press that's covered with the pitch, and a guy uses it, it's totally aser. And this is a question on the Chachamim and even on Rabbi. In the Mishnah, Rabbi said regarding eitz, v'shel eitz, Rabbi says that it's also okay to just dry it up. And here, according to Rabbi, it's saying that it's completely aser. So the Gemara answers, Masnisen delay dorachba. In the Mishnah, the case is that the guy just covered it with his pitch, but he didn't press in it his grapes. That's why it's mutter, as the Gemara already explained before. In this Braisa, when it says it'll be aser, it's because the dorachba, the guy pressed his grapes in it as well. Therefore, it becomes aser until you peel off a layer. Now, the Gemara goes back to the other point that it said in the beginning of the Braisa. Hagas, earthenware, wine press, v'amachatz, v'amashpech, different kalim that are used as a funnel or to take the wine out of the pit. Shalev the kechavim that a guy used. Rabbi mate benigov. Rabbi says this as well will be allowed if you dry it up properly. And the chachamim oisrim. And the chachamim say it's aser. So the question on Rabbi's opinion is, what Tanan in the Mishnah, Tanan in the Mishnah it says shal cheres. The last case of the Mishnah, it says that if it's earthenware, then avol pisha kolafes azefes, even if you'll peel off the entire pitch, harezu asura, remains aser, because if it gets absorbed into earthenware, there's no way to kasha this. So how is Rabbi here saying you can just dry it up? So Rava says it's taka machlokes. That last line of the Mishnah, Rabbi disagrees with. Sefer the Masnisin, the last line of the Mishnah, asan l'Rabbanan. That's only according to the Rabbanan's opinion. When you read the Mishnah, it said v'chachamim maimrim, and then it goes on to say v'shal cheres. That's still all the chachamim speaking. It's not Rabbi. Rabbi says that even in the case of cheres, and not only that, even in the case of cheres, in this braise, where the guy actually even pressed his grapes on it, because that's what the Gemara explained. This braise is talking about when the guy actually pressed his grapes there. Still, Rabbi is lenient and says that you could dry it up and it'll be mutter. Darash Rave Darshan and said that the wine press, artachu, if you heat up water and you pour hot water over it, then it's going to be mutter. That's another way of kashering it. Rave ki have mishade gulfi, another halacha regarding kalim. This is related to what we spoke about before, but it's a completely different halacha. So Rave ki have mishade gulfi, when he would send empty barrels laharpanya, to a distance, to a place harpanya. So what would he do with them? So he was having them delivered with a guy, and there was a chash that maybe the guy would use these barrels to store his wine in it. So in order to prevent this, what he did is sachif luhu apumayu. First of all, he turned them upside down, and upside down, he put them inside the sack that was containing these barrels. He put them upside down so that the bottom of it is at the opening of the sack. And then also, additionally, v'chasim luhu abritzayu. and he made a seal, a closing in the sack that was closed on the top. And this becomes a chaysim al gabi chaysim. This is a double seal, like we had earlier in the Masechta. In certain cases where there's a chash, you have to make a double seal. And the reason why he did this in this case is because kasavar, he held, kol davar shemachnisa lekiyom, like we mentioned before, barrels that are used to store wine for a long period of time. Afil if isha, even if it's just being delivered by these goyim and they may just use it to store wine in it temporarily, gazer be rabbana. The rabbana were geyser on this as well, that we should be careful. That the guy should not use it.
Who's the double?
It's considered double, like double, because it's upside down. Yeah, and that one thing. And then besides that, it's also the sack itself. He sealed it closed. So in this case, he was geyser. That's Rashi's pshat in the Gemara. There are other Rishonim, the Ramban and other Rishonim disagree with this. They say that we don't find this chumrah of chaysim al gabi chaysim only regarding yayin nesach itself, not regarding such a kind of a case. He says that it's not mamash inyan of a double seal, but Rashi here holds that this is considered to be like an inyan of chaysim b'toy chaysim because of the chash that the guy may use these barrels.